Ow. Ow.
Oh, owl.
It has feet. Oh, so cute.
Okay. Okay.
Rider friends.
Okay. Welcome back to the Writing Inquisition. I'm Carol Benton.
I'm Marie Allen. I'm Emma Rosalie.
And this episode we're going to be talking a bit about action scenes and blocking. So blocking is actually a term that's typically used for stage productions or film productions, talking about like where people are moving, what they should be doing, all that sort of a thing. I know Rose and I have talked about this both on camera and off with the whole scene in a bubble thing.
I'm getting better.
I think I am too, I'm not sure. I think we've talked about it with you.
Oh yeah, I mean like breaking up dialogue and stuff with like movement.
Yeah. And if they pick up a coffee cup, they need to put it down at some point, and
if they're standing up, they can't stand up again times without sitting down first next time. So,
yeah. So all of these good things. So what tips do we have for working out action scenes?
Well, drawing it, which I don't do and I should, but drawing everything out so you know where everybody is placed, just like a rough drawing, I think helps. Studying other writers and their action scenes. By action, do we mean just fighting or just
any sort
of
action?
Okay, that's like, what I figured.
Like for me, there's not only fight scenes but dance scenes.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, really knowing what an interior space looks like or exterior space, depending on whether they're inside or outside, what it looks like, and where everything is. Whether you draw it out or not, just knowing where everything is kind of important because your character should be interacting with it in some way.
Yeah. So the ones that I have written down, I have literally my second one is draw floor plans for the location of the fight/scene. So we all agree on that one. I would also say you can study fight scenes from TV and movies.
Yeah.
Just so you can like get an idea for how certain moves should look, and sort of get an idea for the pacing, and sort of what I would suggest is using like the cuts between shots as paragraph guidelines, because with the fight scene you really want it to move quickly, so you don't want block of text.
Yeah, you don't need extensive detail for it. You just need word choice. Word choice.
Yeah. And then the third thing that's specifically for fight scenes is actually take some time to actually learn about the fighting style you're trying to write. That way you can sort of drop in some very specific terminology that's still fairly easy to understand. Like if you're doing a sword fighting scene, say parry instead of block, especially if you're using one of the 3 sport fencing styles. So that'll like make it sound at least a little bit like you know what you're talking about, but you don't want to be sitting here going like parry prime, because do either one of you know what the hell that is?
Nope.
I do, because I fenced for 8 years. So and most of the population has not. So
but most of the population has heard of parry.
Yes. But if I go into the numbers of parries, that makes no sense. And if I start saying like cor and incortada and appel, like what the fuck does any of that mean to you guys?
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's that.
Mm-hmm.
But you can find sort of instructional manuals. Like I know for a fact there is actually a written fencing manual. I can't understand why the diagrams are there, other than like the footwork stuff, but all of the arms are up here, which I have seen like 3 people do. So there's that. You can do that. You can actually go and try to take a beginning class in them if you have the funding for that. You can also go to the holy grail of YouTube to find things. Just be sure to double check the sort of credentials of who you're watching, because if you're watching like a black belt demonstrating a kick, that's going to be great. If you're watching me demonstrate a karate kick, it's not going to be right, because I have not taken karate. So you want to make sure that you're finding somebody who really knows what they're doing to sort of learn about it. And structure-wise, for the actual writing of it, what tips do you guys suggest?
Well, Whenever I think of fight things, I think of the sword fight in The Princess Bride.
Yes.
Because that's a very entertaining fight scene, and they're relaying information, besides just being cool. They're
It's also
relaying,
really well choreographed.
yeah, and it's really
Holy
well
shit.
choreographed. But they're relaying information to the I think so, yeah. Relaying information to the audience, so...
That is important
That's
information,
important,
too.
yeah.
You want to keep that in mind. Don't just have them pick up a cup for no reason, you know?
Especially in the middle of the fight.
Or say, you know, something about the coffee or whatever. Unless it's, like, you know, it adds something to the plot, you know? If it's just there for aesthetic purposes or whatever, then it's like, oh,
Yeah.
don't do that.
Yeah.
And I heard Patrick Rothfuss talk about how he was inspired by the Princess Bride fight scene because they say the moves in them, so it fit in his world for him. I don't know what scene it is, but there's a scene where he's fighting and he says the moves, and because of the names of the moves, you get what he's doing, which is hard, and I probably wouldn't use that for mine, but...
And just
it's
a
good
point of
tip.
clarification, they're in the Princess Bride, they're not talking about specific moves, they're talking about fighting styles.
Oh, but in the thing, oh yeah, you're right.
Because it's whatever it is, defense.
Yeah, yeah.
And stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which
In
is
the
a
book,
style,
too.
not so much a move.
Yeah, in the book too, they do it. It's really funny.
Yeah. So, the other thing that you want to keep in mind, and that fight is actually really, really complicated, because they're talking so much more than you normally would in a fight.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very specific one.
Mhm.
Like, that's kind of the exception to the rule, because you want to sort of limit the dialogue with fight scenes, because you're going to get out of breath, you're going to not be able to speak coherently. Of course, we're all sitting on a couch and we're not able to speak coherently, but...
Yeah.
But little bits.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, that one, they're really, at first especially, just testing out each other's strengths,
Yeah.
because they're like, you're an equal of mine,
Yeah.
aren't you?
It's like, I am not left-handed!
Yes. So it, like, starts off slow like that, and then
Yeah.
it gradually escalates.
Yeah, and you'll notice that as the fight escalates, they speak less and less.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're putting more effort in. Another example of a really good fight scene from that movie, because there are like 20, the end one with Inigo Montoya and the Six-Fingered Man, where he's just saying the same thing over and over and over again. My name is Inigo Montoya, you killed my father, prepared to die. Why did I go into accent for that?
Accent.
Motherfucker.
That was actually really good.
I don't know why I do this. But that is... Like, and as that fight scene progresses and as he says it more and more, he gets more and more intense with it, because he's actually trying to avenge the death of his father, which there's a whole other behind-the-scenes things for that. But Count Rugen, who's the Six-Fingered Man, is just getting more and more unnerved by this, because he's having to fight for his life for the first time in a long-ass time.
Yeah.
And he keeps trying to, like, distract him by saying other things, or, like, oh, look over there. And it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So...
Because that line is keeping him really focused and
Yeah.
motivated, even if he gets hurt.
Yeah, and then
And-
right at the end of that fight scene, the promise me everything I could ever ask for, and Count Rugen just goes, it's yours, and then tries to, like, fight dirty. Doesn't work. Gets stabbed in the gut. I want my father back, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
So, epic fight scene. Amazing work.
And that also had foreshadowing, okay.
Yep.
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 Because that was early on. That was his only goal for the longest time.
Yeah.
That was what drove him.
Yeah. That's his entire motivation throughout the movie until the last,
Yeah.
like, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I would say, too, that, well, I guess not. Well, I mean, repetition will kill tension in the story. So if you have a billion fight scenes,
Yeah.
you know, or if every fight scene the same, we end the same where we don't find out any new information, it's going to get really tedious.
Yeah.
And nobody's really going to, by the time the sixth fight scene comes around, nobody's going to care.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So you want to limit those to the ones that are important, but I also wouldn't skip over any, you know, that aren't necessarily important, but, like, I guess just don't get too far into depth with them. Or
Yeah.
change them up somehow.
Yeah.
Where, yeah, it relays more information. I mean, 'cause if you have a lot of fight scenes in your story, each one needs to bring something to the table, basically.
Yeah. You also have to keep in mind the scale of the fight.
Yeah.
So, like, one-on-one, it's a bit of a duel Small group to small group, it's kind of a skirmish, and then the bigger you get, the closer you get to all-out war.
Yeah.
And that's not something I want to deal with ever. So I'm not going to write any big wars as much as I can. But another thing to keep in mind is that actions have consequences. So with fight scenes in particular, there's likely to be injuries or deaths that come from them.
Oh, they're all okay.
Yeah, I know. Not a scratch!
You bastard!
I need to go bake cupcakes.
So, like, even if you don't come out of it with, like, an actual scratch, you will have sore muscles, you'll probably have pulled something. There's the emotional weight of what just happened, so you have to keep that in mind and draw it out a bit, which is something that I really need to work on, because we did not grieve for What's-Her-Face very much.
And also keep in mind that a lot of the time the emotional gravitation of the situation will probably place more of a toll or an effect on your character or characters rather than the actual bodily injuries.
Yeah.
Depending on what those are, though, of course.
Yeah. Because, of course, if you lose an arm, that's kind of going to cause psychological problems on its own.
Yes. If you get stabbed in the gut, you're probably going to have some problems.
A little bit.
But minor scratches and aches and pains, your character's not really going to give those too much of a thought necessarily. It'll be a passing one, more likely.
Yeah.
And they'll be more focused on what happened to them emotionally.
Yeah. That being said, especially when you get into the large-scale fights, there's going to be a lot of blood and gore and nastiness. It ain't going to smell like daisies, that's for damn sure.
No.
But, so keeping that in mind, again, limiting dialogue to what's absolutely necessary. And there's something that a lot of people tend to get wrong, in that adrenaline will, like, somehow make you an epic fighter real fast.
It won't.
No.
Yeah. Keep in mind...
Anyone who has experienced fight or flight will know that it drains the shit out of you.
Yeah, keep in mind your character's abilities, too, from the get-go, like, have they fought at all,
Yeah.
Do they have any training whatsoever? If they don't, make them act like it.
Yeah.
And, what motivates them to, try to do something in the event of a fight, that maybe takes them on by surprise or something. What do they do?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do they run from it? Do they maybe initially do that and then come back with a stick?
Do they completely freeze up and cause a blockade?
Yeah. Are they the ones that get really hurt?
Yeah. There's all sorts of things that you really need to take into consideration that's not just about the fight scene, but about the fallout from the fight scene.
Yeah. I had another thing in mind, but I forgot what it was. Crap. But it's really important.
I think, like, little minute details that can tell a lot, and it makes, and especially if they're censored, it'll make the fight scene more, not like a ton, but it'll make the fight scene more exciting.
Yeah, speaking of sensory stuff and stuff like that, oftentimes too, if a person who has not, like, been in a fight before has not seen that kind of gore or death, they're gonna react to it in a bodily sense as well.
Yeah.
Because sensory details...
Yeah. Chances are, if you've never seen blood and guts before, you're gonna puke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Little things.
Yeah.
Unless you eat them on a regular basis, but just don't see them.
Yeah, keep in mind your character.
Yeah. And then you had added a couple of questions here of how dialogue can inform the action and how you lead into a fight scene.
I don't have any answers for you. Well, I kind of do. I mean, dialogue, I think, is fun in the sense, like, if somebody... Well, I don't know, I guess it's kind of gimmicky. I like it when the person's done something to not fatally, but they've done something to, like, secure their fight, but then the other person's, like, confused, and they're like, why are you not either fighting or whatever, and then you're like, ha! I got you.
We should also talk about how magic affects the fight.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Because it's also gonna, like, hugely depend on the type of magic and how comfortable the person wielding it is with it.
Ooh, I can talk about this.
I have kind of a MacGuffin because Tark can destroy things real quick, but he doesn't like to, so he tries to keep it as a last resort, but he knows that if he pulls that out of his pocket, then it's gonna be like, oh shit, he's serious. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the part of the chapters I'm revising now is I'm having issues with because I have two kind of big magic fights. Kind of, not really. But I think they're too repetitive right now, so I'm trying to figure out how to fix it. But I might just leave it as it is. But anyway, so my main character, she has a bunch of magic. She doesn't know how to wield it.
Right.
So that ultimately ends up in mostly chaos, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she kind of like burns the whole place down
Whoops.
in the second part.
Oops.
Which is kind of an oops. They also needed to get out of there really fast, so I'm like, whatever. But for me, that means if you're reading it, you don't want to get to the end of the story and be like, okay, she just did the same thing over and over again. So I'm trying to work on how I can have her build her skill set up so the magic kind of almost fades out of the fight and she just kind of uses it where it's right now she's just using, she's like, I don't know what the fuck else to do, so I'm gonna use it.
That reaction of blah!
Yeah. But I read from the craft book that I like to read, and I've seen this in books too, is if the character has a special skill, and that it might be like an important skill, you think. If you can have that tie into the very end of the climactic scene, instead of just relying on something they've already done, it'll be more fun, or it'll feel more satisfying because it'll have been an arc, or to me at least. I don't think it's necessary though, because I don't see it in everything. But also with magic, in the sense of even creating magic, you have to figure out what are everybody's limitations and if there's a cost to magic, and what the source is from.
Are there any emotions that affect it?
Oh yeah.
Like their fear.
Yeah.
Does
fear
it make
can
it,
have a huge impact
does
on
it.
it.
Make it go away completely and they can't use it, or does it amplify it?
Yeah. There's that. There's also, like, one thing that I did with that last fight scene at Amun's house, or Numad, I think is his name at that point. Fuck.
Confuse everybody.
Because I have a character that has firepower, but she can only use it once a day, essentially, and she gets soaked in water right after she lights up, so she can't do it anymore. So that negates one of them, and then you have Tark kind of tear shit up. And there's that whole thing.
I did have an idea for leading into a fight scene.
Yes.
But go on. Or were they...
Well, I mean, did you want to say anything
I
else?
don't have anything else right
Okay,
now.
then leading into a fight scene.
So, I think there's multiple ways to go about it. But, broadly, there's either, you can have it kind of come out of nowhere, not totally out of nowhere, but if there's like you catch the reader off guard, thinking, oh, everything's fine, safe. There's also if you make everything seem perfect, but the reader's kind of like, everything's too perfect.
Yeah,
Something's
make
gonna
them
happen.
suspicious.
Yeah. Or, like, if you're reading a book and you're like, okay, they're going to go to war, there's probably going to be a fight scene, so you're expecting it already. I honestly just have issues with this, because, like I said, I already have 2 back-to-back, which I'm trying to figure out how to make it less of a fight scene, but still have everything happen. But right now it's killing the tension of my story, because you're like, okay, well, that just happened, so I don't really care. So I think figuring out, again, repetition is going to kill the tension in your story, so figuring out where in each part of your story the fight scene are going to best fit.
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I can't talk.
I'm probably going to end up going into more detail in this on the plot episode that we're going to shoot shortly.
Yeah.
But you want to have sort of a wave of, like, the amount of tension and energy, so you want to, like, have high energy and then a brief respite so that everybody can catch their breath, including the reader, and then bring it back up with something else.
Yeah.
So, like, that's something that pretty consistently needs to happen. As far as leading into a fight scene goes, I would say fairly similar to what you were just saying.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really like it when you have that, like, a little bit of rising tension and then a brief lull and then you go off.
Mm-hmm.
I really love that because then you're, like, it's like taking a dive off the high board.
Yeah.
Like, you have that brief moment of witnessless and then you're falling.
Yeah.
And I love that feeling in reading.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and I don't think I have anything else to add for blocking stage direction and action scenes. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you guys want to talk about?
No.
I think that's it. I think that's all I've got. I thought of everything that I can.
Naturally, the second I turn the camera off, oh, this thing!
Right,
Yeah. Of course.
But with that, we will leave you here for this episode of The Writing Inquisition. I'm Carol Benton.
I'm Marie Allen.
I'm Rose Lee.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.